Large-scale battle scenes are awesome. Lord of the Rings was not the first to use massive action set pieces to cap off their movies, but they did elevate the big battle in the third act to higher prevalence. The impact was probably felt most by superhero movies, which went from one-on-one conflicts between the villain and the hero at the end of Spider-Man 2 to a grander scale with the final fights in both the excellent Dark Knight Rises and the god-awful X3, involving a bunch of extras and two clashing armies. The twisted fairy tale genre had a bit of popularity in the early 2010s. They usually like to cap off their movies with a big battle, like at the end of the Alice in Wonderland remake or the Snow White plus Bella Swan movie. Most recently, Avengers Endgame tried its hand at epic war between the forces of Thanos and the Avengers. But what makes these huge clashes tick? Huge clashes with hundreds of extras were not unique to Lord of the Rings. One of the most famous early American epics was the movie The Ten Commandments, which enlisted thousands of extras for major scenes. Within the context of war, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the filmmaking of Akira Kurosawa, who would routinely film large-scale battles set in feudal Japan. A particular note is the movie Ran, his last movie. Given Kurosawa is getting older at that point in his life, the movie is incredibly bleak. More important than that, the movie showcases enormous battles between brightly colored armies, quite impressive before the creation of good VHX effects. Peter Jackson explicitly cites movies like Ran as key inspiration for his Lord of the Rings. Audiences can tell the difference between an exceptional battle sequence and one that falls flat, and I think you can boil down why into two main reasons. Geography. What the fuck is going on? Yeah, so I'm going to call this the Michael Bay problem. Yeah, so the problem here is that it's really hard to tell what's happening. Transformers 2 and Revenge of the Fallen is particularly bad about this in its final action sequence. Sam and Mikaela need to get from point A to point B, while a bunch of Transformers and the US military fight. The problem is simple: the audience can't follow who's shooting at who, who's winning, how close Sam and Mikaela are to their destination, or really anything happening other than those super pretty Michael Bay explosions going off every couple minutes. The fastest way to lose an audience is to confuse them. I remember watching Transformers 2 and quickly being bored by this action sequence. Once someone is confused, it becomes harder and harder to get back into a scene. This fact seems counterintuitive. There's a battle going on, the audience should be thrilled, but we can't figure out what's happening, we lose interest and get bored. King Arthur 2004 also has problems in this regard. It's hard to tell who's winning, losing, or what is happening other than the repetitive crunching of bone and blood splatters you'd expect from a medieval battle. There's only so many times the experience of watching someone get stabbed with a sword is thrilling if it's not connected to the broader conflict between the two opposing sides. To see how to do this right, I think we have to look at my personal favorite scene in movie history. Part of what makes Pelennor Fields and the Charge of the Rohirrim so powerful is that Jackson is crystal clear where each of the armies are in relation to each other. The Orcs of Mordor have busted into Minas Tirith and started indiscriminately killing people in the city. Gondor is losing bad, and unless something happens, the world of men will fall. Enter the Rohirrim. The first couple shots of the scene are so important. They establish where the Rohirrim are, where the Orcs are. Theoden gives the soldiers their goal, and then gives one of the best speeches in movie history. What makes this scene so impactful is that Jackson isn't rushing. He's not worried the audience is going to lose interest in the charge, so he takes his time to detail his principal character's reactions to the attack from both Merry and Éowyn's side and Gothmog's side. The majority of this scene is preparing for the charge. Not until the last 30 seconds do we actually see swordplay between the two sides. Now hold, at the very last shot of the scene, it shows the wall of Minas Tirith and how the Rohirrim are clearing the orcs from the city. This is incredibly important because it grounds the audience in a place they recognize. We understand that the charge is working because we see the progress our heroes are making through the enemy lines. Knowing where you are in the midst of a big action scene is crucial because it gives context to the series of quick cuts where swords, guns, or fists are connecting. Without that context, our brain just kind of gives up and it's easy to get lost in the melee. Geography, while important, is only really one part of the equation though. You also need to know who's winning. did we win? Brandon Sanderson has a fairly good explanation for how plots keep people interested. He claims that plot has to show progress, not necessarily that characters overcome all their issues, but they show clear signs of getting towards their goals, which is advice I wish he would take every once in a while. Kaladin. So it turns out that battles also need to show progress as well in order for audience members to find them interesting. At the very least, we need to be able to tell who is winning and who is losing. One of the best tools a storyteller has at their disposal in these moments is the red shirt character. Red shirts get their name from Star Trek, where whenever there was an extra character not part of the original cast that was sent on an away mission, their odds of survival were non-optimal. Because most of these characters wore red shirts and their only purpose was to die in order to raise the stakes for the main characters, red shirt became a shorthand for disposable characters in a story, and they work wonders for battles. The death of red shirt characters on either side can tell the audience who is winning and who is losing a conflict. One of the better examples is during the Battle of Helm's Deep, where Haldir and the elves died defending the Hornburg. The death isn't meaningless, what it's doing is communicating that the good guys are losing. While it might be fun for our heroes and their allies to cut through impossibly large hordes of enemy soldiers, it doesn't make for very good drama. There needs to be a tension and danger, and the way that can be done in large war sequences is by keeping tabs on the ebb and flow of the battle. Avengers Endgame has real issues with this part of their final clash between the Avengers and the forces of Thanos. There's only one character from the good side we actually see die, which makes it really hard to tell who is winning and who's losing at any particular moment in time. Instead, Thanos is kind of just making his way through the Avengers like a fighting game one at a time until the Infinity Stones are taken off him by Tony Stark. Knowing who is winning matters, because that's how we get drama out of these big action sequences. One of the touchstones in modern battle history is the Game of Thrones Battle of the Bastards. A lot of folks really praise the cinematography of that episode for placing the viewer in the center of the battle through that one long shot of Jon Snow. What gets left out, I think, is that you always know watching that fight how the battle's going. It's okay to have some shots pan out and show the armies clashing and one side gaining or losing ground. Battle of the Bastards does a great job at balancing both Jon's perspective of being in the middle of the melee and the perspective of Ramsay and Davos, who are calling the shots from outside the battle. But I think the writer and director took the wrong lesson from Battle of the Bastards into the series-defining Battle of Winterfell. Miguel Sapochnik, who directed both episodes, really doubles down on the fog of war feeling in the final battle, and it makes the end result, well, confusing. The big clash starts off well enough, with maybe one silly moment.
You usually do.
Alright, chums up.
Ready, guys?
Let's do this. Leroy Jenkins!
Oh my god, he just ran in.
But after the dead break into Winterfell, it's really hard to tell who's winning. Especially towards the end, where it's literally just a few named characters fighting the entire army of the dead. There was a lot of wrong-headed criticism about the Battle of Winterfell after the fact that focused on the bad strategy of Jon and Daenerys. Now, I always defend stories not having to adorn themselves in 1,000 layers of logic armor for me to suspend my disbelief, but I think this criticism slightly misses the point. The problem was not necessarily bad tactics, although why the hell would you put your artillery in front of your infantry? But instead of it just being a question of tactics, the director and the writers just didn't have mastery over the flow of the battle. I think a good example directors should look to when creating epic final battles is, weirdly, the Rocky movies. Every Rocky movie is the same. I'm not breaking any new ground with that hot take, but all of them involve Rocky having a personal reason to fight somebody, training really, really hard, and then a huge boxing match at the end. And what sells these movies is the fight. If you take out Rocky's fights with Apollo Creed, Mr. T, or Drago, you don't have movies. The whole point of the movie is the fight, and part of the reason they are so popular is that Sylvester Stallone knows how to keep a fight interesting. My personal favorite is the fight between Rocky and Creed at the end of Rocky II. Notice how you can always tell who's winning the fight. Apollo comes out swinging while Rocky blocks most of his punches with his head until round 6, where Rocky is able to hit back. The quick discussions in the coach's corner and the reactions of the coaches and other characters also tell us whether Rocky or Apollo takes this round. Big battle sequences aren't different in creating drama. Take a look at the Siege of Gondor from Return of the King. You could plot this out almost like a Rocky fight between punch and counterpunch, We start with Mordor's opening blows, attacking with psychological warfare, catapults, and Gothmog crackling over all of it. Things look bad for Gondor, but wait, Gandalf has rallied the troops and says one of the best lines of the series.
Send these foul beasts into the abyss!
Now Gondor is hitting back with its trebuchets. At least now it's a fair fight. Until, in reaction to the trebuchets, Mordor deploys their air force. Each action the two opposing sides take are dynamic. They are reacting to the challenges and problems and tricks the other side has up their sleeve in logical ways that progress the fight, and most importantly are moments the audience can understand. The best parts of Pelennor Fields are these punch-counterpunch moments after the Rohirrim have won the battle outside of Minas Tirith's walls. Mordor had a plan for them. You can see the impact of the Mumakil on Theoden's face the same way you see Mickey react when Apollo lands a great combination on Rocky. It's dramatic, powerful, and brilliant. Huge action set pieces, when done right, can leave a lasting impression, and when done wrong, leave the audience baffled and confused. A good rule of thumb everyone should follow is that just because there's an action sequence doesn't mean it's thrilling. People need to know what the hell is going on. Only when action is understandable is it thrilling, and communicating stakes and drama through war scenes matters a lot more than how many digital effects you can cram into a single frame.